Welcome to Between Frames, a conversation series from May Films. I'm your host, Anthony Ortiz. Not every story is remembered. Sometimes the smallest choices determine whether a film is simply watched or never forgotten. Today, I'm joined by acclaimed author, award-winning filmmaker, and UCLA Extension instructor, Kim Adelman. Kim has produced over 19 short films that played over 150 film festivals worldwide, including Sundance. Together, we explore one of the biggest questions filmmakers ask themselves. Why do so many short films never break through? From storytelling to festivals and the choices that separate memorable films from forgettable ones. This conversation offers an honest look at what it really takes. Now, let's get between frames. Kim, thank you so much for being here on Between Frames. We really appreciate your time. We know you're very busy, but this means a lot to us.
Well, I always enjoy talking to you, so I know we're going to have a good time today.
Yeah, definitely. You've done so much, written books and produced films. And, if you had to sum it up, to everything, what would it be? Like, what does your career mean to you?
Oh, we're starting off with the big things, aren't we? Well, I do a lot of things. I teach filmmaking. I've produced films and I've written a book about filmmaking. In terms of the festival world, I have been a judge at a lot of film festivals. I have helped program a film festival, and I spent a lot of time thinking about short films. So I'm somebody. Sometimes it's like people have been like, "Oh, she's the queen of short films," or "She's the expert of short films." So I'm willing to sum myself up if you had to put a little tag underneath it. Expert on short films.
I like that, the queen of short films. That's brilliant. Like how we've talked about before. There's so many films that get made every year. Thousands get submitted to festivals. What do you think separates a lot of films from the ones that get noticed, find momentum and traction, and build an audience, as opposed to the ones that, they might be good films, but they don't get noticed as much?
So, once again, because I spent a lot of time teaching, I'm going to step us back a little bit. And one of the things I always tell my students is anybody who's self funding a film project, whether it's a short or a feature, you got to think of yourself as a studio. And so, because you're making this thing and nobody else is going to tell you what to do. And that's a lovely thing because later in life, when you get hired by other people who are funding, they tell you what to do.
Hmm.
So when you are the studio, there's no wrong choices, right? You get to choose it all, and you have to take responsibility for what you choose. But nobody's pushing you in one direction or another. So often, when I'm teaching, or I'm consulting, or I'm producing, I will try to push you in a certain way. But I always say you need to think about you are in charge. You decide what you want to do. I may try to push you in a certain direction, but ultimately, this is your chance to do whatever you want to do. So when I'm going to talk to you about various things, and I'll be saying like, one of my biggest things is people's short films are too long. People always feel like they need to make like a 30-minute long short film to impress people or to show that they're ready to make a feature film or television, or that they don't see a lot of short films. So in their mind, that's what a short film should be, like 30 minutes long. And in reality, that long a film does nothing for you. It costs a lot of money. It gives you more chances to fail in terms of not having enough money or, people to help you to make something that long. Because the longer your film is, the more expensive it tends to be. And then, more importantly, festivals don't want to show a film that's 30 minutes long because they just only have time. They only have time. And to program something that's 30 minutes long versus three 10-minute long films, they'd rather program three 10-minute long films and have three people get to have the festival experience versus one 30-minute long film. So, but again, you are the studio. If this is your dream and you have to make this 30-minute long film, there are many films that are everything the filmmakers wanted them to be at 30 minutes. So they were happy with it. And sometimes, your school demands that it's going to be that long too. And as much as you don't want to do it, that's the demand that you have to do. So you're going to have to do it, and it's going to have to be that long. So you really have to make your own decisions as to why you're doing it, and justify it to yourself that it's worthwhile. So, when we say, well, why aren't you getting attention? My number one question, if somebody comes to me, which often happens, like, I don't know why I'm not getting festival attention at all. my number one question is always, how long is your film? And usually that is the problem. It's like it's 18 minutes long. And also in the how long is your film issue, so many people do credits wrong. They do like 3 minutes of credits at the beginning because they're used to seeing feature films. And that's how feature films do it with, starring Anthony, starring Kim, written and directed by Anthony and Kim, and just, eats up all this time. Where with shorts, you got to go jump right in and start telling your story. We don't have time for these long credits. Similarly, at the end of the film, they'll do like 3 minute long credits, or
Yeah.
actually, a filmmaker say to me, well, that's how long the song goes. So I stretched the credits.
Oh.
So,
Yeah,
no, because that counts against your running time. If
yeah,
here I'm saying to you, do a shorter film and you've already put 5 minutes and it's all just credits.
yeah,
So that's another big fault that I think a lot of short filmmakers don't understand.
yeah,
Uh, and as a programmer, when you're putting these back to back to back, the audience doesn't want to sit through 3 minutes of credits to get to the next film.
yeah,
It's like you're not thinking that we're going to be showing. If you get a program of short films in a block, let's say you're showing like maybe 7 short films. That's 7 times the audience has to sit through credits. So
yeah. 100%. Like a lot of the films that stand out to us when we're uh, working on the Santa Fe Springs Film Festival is the films that are more contained and shorter that stand out. And like you said, they're easier to program. You could get more films in there, and then the same thing with the credits. Like I've seen films that had a long runtime, but then once I actually watched it, the film was like not nearly as long, and it was just because of the credits was like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and yeah, at a film festival, it could get kind of like you know it's just kind of like because the film ends and everyone's excited, clapping, but then everyone just sits there for a few minutes, just staring at the screen.
so not
And
clapping for
like,
3 minutes.
yeah, like if like some people might feel like, oh well, if I don't have like everybody's name up there for a decent amount of time, I'm not giving everybody the proper recognition. But it's like, no, not really. I mean, you could get. So, what do you feel like is a better solution for the credit thing as opposed to doing the long scroll?
You just got to go fast, and put as much up on the screen as possible. And some people do Kickstarter campaigns or, crowdfunding, and they need to put things on the screen because they promise that. But again, just go super, super fast. And I would, as a rule of thumb, like no longer than 90 seconds. And 90 seconds is really pushing it. But if you get it down to a minute or whatever. And, the other thing is, this sounds so stupid that the very first thing I'm talking to you about is length and credits. Nothing about the actual short film itself and the story, which is the most important thing, obviously, but these are short films. That is one of the things that defines them versus a
Yeah,
feature or television. It is short. So, yes, I want to talk to you more about actual storylines and things like that. But in the big overall picture, if you ask anybody who's ever watched a lot of short films, they will tell you the biggest problem is length. So, that's overarching. I won't dwell on it forever because I do want to talk obviously more about creative aspects of it too. But I think it's important to say that right away.
I 100% agree. Because a lot of it has to do with your mindset when you're getting into this, how you're going to strategize and make your film stand out. That these are things that we underestimate, things we're not thinking of when we're making our films. Like you have a great chapter in your book, making it big in shorts, which I have right over here actually. Um, here we go.
Oh, look at you, good for you. I have
Yeah,
it back here.
yeah, awesome book. Everyone should read it. One of the chapters is think like a short filmmaker. Indeed, in these points that you just made is exactly that mindset. Things you got to think about. That's going to bring your film run to its fullest potential.
And why I say that too is because our whole lives we've watched feature films and we've watched television. So we've internalized those and we know we can watch a movie and we totally can feel like when the first act is breaking, when the third act is breaking, when we're heading to the ending of the film. We know, who the villain is and all this kind of stuff. We've seen it so often that We've just internalized those rhythms. Same thing with TV. We totally understand the rhythm of a television show, but we haven't watched short films our whole lives. So we don't internalize a lot of this information. And so my second biggest advice to everybody is you should watch a lot of short films. YouTube filled with short films. There's a great site called Short of the Week filled with short films. There's a YouTube channel called Omeletto filled with short films. Um, Watching the Academy nominated short films, which are truthfully quite often longer because the Academy loves longer films, and we can talk about that a little later. But see them, get a sense of what people are doing with short films. But what makes short films so exciting, and again, I come from features and shorts, and people are always like, don't you want to spend more time features? And I don't. I like short films for many reasons, but one of the reasons I like them best is anything can happen in a short film because we're all so many different kinds of people are making short films with all different kinds of backgrounds, and because they're their own studios and nobody is stopping them from telling these stories, so many different kinds of stories are told, so many things you've never expected to see in your life show up on a short film. We can do experiments with technology because we're making our films fast and right away. We're not making something that's going to be released a year from now or 2 years from now. So it's always, this is where the exciting filmmaking is happening with short films. And there's always stories about these people that break through because they made the short film and then everyone realizes, oh, this person is talented. And then they get to go on to make something else. But it's because they've showcased how unique and special their voice is, and they've made things that are true to their own voice in a short film. And they can, because nobody's stopping them. And you can make a short film. Now I feel like I'm on a soapbox. And you can make a short film, but you can make a short film
Yeah.
on your iPhone for no money. You can make your short film in your expensive film school, the way film school teaches you. You can make a short films with your buddies in your backyard. You can make a short film in your car. There's so many different ways you can make a short film at all different kinds of skill levels and all kinds of budget levels. And somebody who's never picked up a camera before can make something more amazing than somebody who's been through like 6 years of film school. It's just there's no rules, there's no statement, there's no like, oh, you will be successful because of this or that or whatever. Anything can happen in a short film, and how exciting is that? Really, it's the wild, wild west.
Wow. Yeah, it really opens up a lot of possibilities when you really see what you can do when you push your vision, and it doesn't have to be super elaborate with a lot of storylines like a feature. It could be more contained vision, and that communicates you're a sharp storyteller, but you also have a voice, a creative vision, you're able to execute it. And like you said, going out and going online or going to film festivals just to watch short films is extremely valuable and inspiring. And it might spark something in you to like go make your film.
Yeah,
That's
you
definitely
know,
happened to me.
when I teach short filmmaking, I make them as homework watch short films for this exact reason. And it's quite often they see things they hate. And that's great too, because it makes you realize, like, hey, that film got made and it was poorly executed. Or whatever. And you can do better.
Yep,
Well, nothing
definitely.
stopping you from making it. And truly, nothing is stopping you from making it. So that I think a miracle of the camera on your iPhone. Not to say iPhone specifically, but your camera phone. It's such a miracle. They can make really quality stuff on that now. Where in the old days, you had to go to film school because that's where you could get your hands on cameras. And
Mm,
now we all have a camera. We all have
yep.
editing systems. So it is that I think is super amazing. The negative thing, of course, about all of this is so many people are making films now. And you can it used to be like put it up on YouTube and people will discover it, but that's not the case anymore because there's millions and millions of things on YouTube nowadays, and you're competing against for eyeballs on many different things. Try to get into a film festival. You mentioned like thousands get made. The statistic we always use is the Sundance Film Festival because they're public with their numbers, and most filmmakers would love to be able to get into Sundance. So I'm cheating down to look on my sheet of paper here. This year submitted to the Sundance Film Festival 11,480 short films.
Wow. Yeah.
So, that's great that all those people made those short films. But the reality is, I mean, the Sundance programs will actually watch all of those, but most of us are never going to be able to watch that many short films. And they just keep on getting made and made and made and made. So that's why I think you have to really kind of define what success is to yourself and to your own studio. To me, success is you made a film. And don't you and I both know tons of people who talk about making films forever and then just never actually do it.
Hmm.
So crossing that bridge from saying I want to be a filmmaker to actually making a film is huge. And that alone,
Yeah.
we'll throw a parade for you, but just know that
Yeah.
there's a lot of parades being thrown because you're not the only person to do it. Uh,
Yeah.
so it used to be like supply and demand, right? There wasn't so much supply and there was more demand. Now we have way too much supply and not enough demands. So just as another statistic, so when I mentioned that that number for Sundance, the number of shorts they actually played, 54.
Mm.
So what are your odds? I don't get to the math for you, but those odds are not so great. um,
Wow.
so, like if your dream was to get into Sundance, you could just keep on every year, make a new short film, try to submit it, and then hope, you get better and that they get used to seeing your name and you somehow, after a certain amount of time, really develop yourself into a filmmaker that they cannot deny. And
Yeah.
you'll be one of the people to get in. But it's kind of unrealistic to think, oh, I've never made a film before in my life. I just pick up my iPhone, me and my friends are in my backyard, and yeah, I'm gonna get into
Yeah.
Sundance.
Right. What What's something you feel filmmakers often obsess over, that may not matter as much as they think?
Yeah, and that's a really good question because I think what you really should obsess over is making the film you want to make, right? Again, because this is the one time you can control absolutely everything.
Mm.
I think what people do wrong, and this is so funny because one of my students just said be ambitious is a positive thing. And I'm always negative about being ambitious. I'm like, don't be too ambitious. Again, we've seen all these movies and TV shows and we think we can duplicate that. Like, oh, yeah, of course, I'll have a hospital scene and I'll have a helicopter scene because I see that all the time on TV. And it's like,
Mm.
well, how are you going to get a hospital scene? How are you going to shoot a helicopter scene? It's you and your little pals on your phone, in your backyard. And the answer is, find a friend who has a drone, and all of a sudden you'll feel like a helicopter or whatever. And you can make it happen, but you're not going to be able to compete with the level of things that we're used to seeing on TV and film without putting some real serious money into your film. And so,
That's
I mentioned like the Oscar films, like if your dream is to get an Oscar nomination for your film, live action, go look at these and see how expensive they are and how expensively produced they are and think, can you compete at that level?
right.
And that's just again talking producing. I'm again circling around, not talking about the actual story or because people can come up with amazing stories that can overcome the fact that they were badly shot, or that they're but the crystallization is there. That's a really interesting voice and an interesting film, and we forgive the fact that it was shot in a backyard or whatever. So if you have something really interesting to say or something really interesting to way of shooting it that people might be interested in that way. But I do think, truthfully, the short films that resonate most with people are, I always say moving. That's the magic word I would use over and over again. That the viewer watches it and is moved in some way, which is a really hard thing to do, to move a
Yeah.
viewer is not easy. But if they can, and moving could be like you just made them laugh the whole time. Or you made them cry, or you made them think in a different way, but you affected the viewer. So it takes it off the filmmaker and puts it more on the viewer because then that's how you stand out. Then the viewer's like, "Oh my God, have you seen this film? It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It really moved me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera."
Yeah.
So I do think if you can kind of try in your best way to connect with the audience and move the audience in some way, then that's how to be successful. How you do that, like what's the magic of doing that, is really what you want to do and say in your story.
Right. What do you feel like, um, more in terms of the process, could be a gauge for filmmakers to ask themselves if their film is going to move an audience? Like, could it be at script stage or?
Yeah, I think definitely a script stage, and quite often in my class, we'll watch films that there's no fixing the problems, in post kind of thing. It's been fixed in the script stage, and just because you've written a script or come up with an idea does not mean you need to make it. You have to
Mm.
again think studio and like, is this going to be worth the investment? And this is what I want to put my time, effort, money into, and have it define me as a filmmaker. And sometimes it's maybe like, well, no, because I'm not at that level yet. I can't do the helicopter in the hospital yet. So maybe this is not the script I should do right now. Or it is like, yes, and I'm going to, kill myself and raise money on Kickstarter and do everything I can to be able to make this film at the level I know it needs to be made, and then tell it. And I'm confident because this is something I really want to say to the world. And when I tell people about my idea, and I think it's great to tell people about your idea before you actually shoot it, people respond really well. Like they're just like, "Oh, that's nice," and they walk away from you. If they're really kind of interested in when you say, "Oh, I'm gonna, make this short film about da 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 da," and people keep wanting to hear more about it, then I think that's a good indication for you that it's um, going to be moving. And I make my students as an exercise verbally tell their story to another person before they shoot it.
Yeah, what I like to do sometimes uh, as part of my writing process, but also as I'm starting a script or before I start a script, I like to first, one of the first things I do is I create a log line.
Yes, great.
Yeah, and that way that proves to myself that I could summarize and communicate my film idea, my story idea in a very just a few sentences max, and then tell it to people and just kind of see how they respond to that kind of story.
That's terrific.
And then if all that's going well, then I think I have might have something.
And then after, you actually write the script out, go back and visit that log line again and make sure you're either true to that log line or that log line needs to just adjust a little bit because it's changed versus what you've actually written on the script format. And you'll do the same thing again once you make the film. Is this log line still true to what I actually made? Sometimes you can come up with a really great log line and that's actually the film you made.
Yeah, yeah. Like there was I like to circle back to my log line because like I kind of use my log line as like the mission statement. Like first I figure out a story idea, and then I figure out what is my theme, and then I create a log line, and then I workshop that, and then I start working on the rest of my process. Beat sheets, character development, and then write the script, and then kind of circling back to the log line as like my mission statement.
That's
But
great.
like you never know what's going to happen during your process, and that certainly for me is I discover things all the time. Like sometimes I change up the character. Like actually on my last script, one of my last scripts, the I changed like the gender of the character of one of the characters. I just flipped it because I was like I just felt like it would have been more interesting.
That's great.
um, and that didn't happen until I actually started writing and fleshing things out, and then I kind of went back and just sort of changed some things, made some adjustments. So
Yeah, I definitely recommend all the time, like, how can you make it more interesting after you've already done your first draft? And then also, how can you make it weirder? Because short films that you don't have to follow a straight and narrow path. And we've seen things over, so many cliches. So, for example, a cliche that people always tell you is like Hitman. You've seen a million Hitman short films. I'm sure
yeah,
you've seen them too. So,
yeah,
like, how can you make that weirder so you're not just another Hitman film? How can you make it different in a way that it'll stand out from all the other Hitman films there? How can you make it more true to you? But definitely, the weirder it is, just put a weird filter on it and see how that happens, and whether and maybe you don't like it after you do that weird version. Like, okay, take maybe some of it, take some of it out. But why not try to make it a little different and off the beaten path so it stands out?
right. Was there ever a project in particular that like you had expectations for, but then you were surprised by something, whether it was the audience reaction or maybe the film came out differently than previously envisioned? Or
Well, not necessarily. I have produced now 21 short films, not including some of these weird documentaries that I did when I was working at a DVD company. And usually, you just never know how it's going to turn out. That's for any project. There's a leap
yeah,
between what on the page to what really comes out. So, I can't say for myself specifically, there's been one film that I can point out to say, "Oh, that didn't turn out." You can't control it. That's with all kind of filmmaking. You have no idea how it's actually going to turn out from the script phase to when it finishes. I will tell you though, the two things that ruin any film: bad acting, bad sound. So, again, you hire the best actors you can, but maybe you can't get that performance out of them you needed to. Um, I would, on my list of things that I highly recommend people don't do is hire animals or kids, have that be part of your script because they're both very hard to direct and get consistent performances out of, and you can only work with them for a limited period of time. But I say that to people all the time. They always write something with animal and kids in it. So,
And
again, there's no rules. You are the studio. You can do whatever you want to do. I'm just saying,
right,
as a person who's dealt with that a lot, that could be problematic.
yeah, yeah. I've had dogs most of my life, so that's definitely inspired stories for me. But I've sort of held back because for the same reasons, like it might be like complicated to work with dogs and stuff like that. So
But,
well,
I say that to you, and then somebody's gonna miss people have made great films with dogs. So it's like, don't let you are the studio. I can tell you, push you again, like, don't do animals, don't do kids, don't shoot at night. All these things, don't use weapons. All these things that I always encourage my students, but they're gonna do what they want to do because they're their own studio. So,
oh,
again, I can warn you what'll be problematic production wise, but you have a story you want to tell and you're gonna tell it, damn it.
yeah,
Just again, remember you don't have the same resources that a big studio has. So, especially like weapons, everyone wants to write a gun in it. It's like you don't understand all the safety protocols that go on with guns in feature films, and then look what happens.
yeah,
So, how are you as a little student film, going to bring guns into this, and how can you guarantee safety? And
right.
and you can't, just be, "I'll be fine," kind of thing. It's like,
No,
oh, so there is, but that's you as a studio again. I will try to talk you into being a responsible studio, and you can be a moron and do whatever you want, and kill everybody if you want to. No one's going to stop you. Um,
yeah,
so, but when you were saying about like what do you choose to write about and tell, if you want to be make horror, you got to think a little bit about where you want to go in the future. Like if your dream is I'm going to forever make horror films, then you shouldn't make a short film that's a romantic comedy.
right,
Unless you make a romantic comedy that surprisingly has some horror aspects in it. It's just nobody will see you as a horror director if you don't have material that shows that you can be a horror director. So, and if that really is your true passion, then it should kind of be leaking out of you anyway. And you should want to make a horror film because that's what you want to do. But I
yeah,
find a lot of people make that mistake of they do, a drawing room comedy or something crazy like that when the dream is to do sci-fi. It's like, no, if your dream is to do sci-fi, here's a chance. Finance your own sci-fi thing. Make it weird, make it unique, make it your voice. People will discover it and find it interesting and want to talk to you about what other sci-fi projects you want to do. Now, the other thing that I always want to caution people too is like your very first, if you want to do like sci-fi, your very first film you make may not set the world on fire. And it actually may be such a disaster that you decide to bury it and say, this was I always tell people, shorts are a learning experience. So,
yeah,
you could mark it off as a learning experience. You learn so much from it. Now let's do another film, and at that one, you might be, okay, this one I'm willing to share on YouTube. And then maybe like, okay, I want to do another one that I'm going to put more money into. And I go to a lot of festivals and I see where the festivals play sci-fi. And it's going to be my third film that I'm going to send around on the festival circuit because I've learned all these things and I'm now at a point that I'm a better filmmaker basically. And I've honed my vision and it's a better showcase for me for my third film. And there are some people that are lucky enough that they can just keep on making shorts over and over again, and have a really nice life showing their films as short filmmakers. They get to be creative. Their day job may be something that isn't being a director. Their day job may be something in post production or something like that. But they get to keep on making films. So when you define like what is a success, I don't think you should define a success as I'm going to get my film at the Sundance. Because if you define that as a success, only 54 people will be successful in a year. That's
yeah,
not realistic. What happens to all those other 11,000 of them?
yeah,
If your dream is I'm going to get into a festival, there are festivals that pay 500 short films. So 500 people get to have that dream. Maybe
yeah,
that's a better shot, into a festival that is accepting more films. Or more smartly, target. Let's find those festivals that love sci-fi, only play sci-fi, will appreciate my vision in sci-fi, and we'll have the audience that wants to see sci-fi. So let's apply to the sci-fi festivals, and you'll have or genre festivals, and you'll have better success there because you're kind of shooting right at the target, right?
yeah. So when we measure like what does like breaking through actually mean to us, like
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? Like because sometimes it could be about like winning awards or getting your film into as many festivals as possible or getting your film into one of those prestigious festivals. So like in this day and age, what do you feel like that what breaking through really looks like?
So again, if you think of yourself as your own studio, you need to define what breaking through means. Um, as an exercise in class, I used to have the students say, like, well, what's let's dream super big. What's the biggest thing could ever happen to your film? And they would say crazy things like, oh, I'll win an Oscar. And truthfully, one person wins an Oscar each year for live action. Actually, this year two people won, or two different films won it. But that's a great big dream. The one I'm going to win an Oscar for the short film. But one person said they're going to build a statue to my short film, and we all just laughed and we thought that was so great. But in reality, Pixar built a statue to their very first short film, Luxo Jr., the
Yeah.
lamp thing. There's an actual statue for it. So,
Wow.
your dream can come true. You just have to find what that dream is. And if it really is like, I just want to play at a festival, there are 10,000 film festivals. There will be a film festival that will want to show your film. Now, it might not be your dream festival, but if your dream, you just have to define what that dream is. I would hope your dream is not so much like I want to play a lot of festivals, but I want to have my film seen by an audience that will be moved by the film. Because as a filmmaker, it shouldn't just be me, 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 me. It should be I want to communicate with people. I want to share with them this vision that I have of this amazing story that I want them to see. It's not just, scribbling in your attic on paper that's never going to be seen. This is something films are meant to be seen. And so, maybe it is on YouTube and maybe, it amazes you that like 400 people saw your film on YouTube. Well, that's more people than will see your film at a film festival. So, it depends on how you define what is success or not. But I would say to you, if you have 400 people, 400 strangers to see your film on YouTube, good job. That's really amazing. And you can be like, well, my friend had 10,000 people see it. It's like, yeah, that's great for them too. There's a whole spectrum of what could be great. And who's to say in 3 years, you're not also going to have 10,000 people seeing your film on YouTube? You
Yeah.
just never know. So I really think to be happy, you have to define for yourself what it is. And if your definition is, I want them to make a statue out of my film, I don't know how successful you're going to be about that. You may end up being ultimately depressed, but you could also build your own statue.
True.
And then there'll be a statue for your film.
Yeah. Yeah. I always feel like it's good to aim high, as high as you can for things, because even if you don't get to that point, you're still going to get, to some level that is going to mean something to you.
So, back to that Sundance number, you'd be like, well, I'm not going to apply. It's that many, the number of percentage is really bad. But, it's that famous Wayne Gretzky thing of, you can't, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
Yeah.
So you got to shoot your shot. Wouldn't it be great if you were a Sundance filmmaker? Apply on the early thing because as you know they always have early, regular, and late submission fees. Apply early so you don't put a lot of money into it, and you might be one of the people.
Yeah.
They always say cream rises to the top. Maybe you are the cream that rises to the top this year. The other thing I will say to you, and this is also for awards too, you never know how close you come. Like you could have been number 55, 45, or number 65, and which is amazing out of that many things, and you just won't know.
Yeah.
And at a festival, you might have the jurors could have discussed your film forever, and three people could have been super passionate about your film, but four others wanted another film to win, and you'll never know that you were so close.
Hmm.
So, I think wear the rose colored glasses and say, you know what? I probably was in the 10 percentage that were so close to getting to Sundance. Or I'm sure
Yeah.
the jury talked to me about my film forever, but I just didn't get the award.
Wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, as we talk about like, what breaking through means to us and like success with a short film. What are your thoughts on like, is having a good story to tell, like, is that enough?
Yeah, I mean, well, 11,000 people that thought they had a good story to tell. But and how do you define good story? And let's just say, just going back to that Hitman idea again, let's say out of that, 50 people just did a version of a Hitman film. That doesn't mean that they're bad. It's just they're not going to be able to show 50 versions of Hitman stories. One is good enough. And which one are they going to show? Who knows? It could be the one that fits time wise. It could be the one that maybe has a famous actor attached. It could be one that is a filmmaker that they've worked with before and they want to encourage that filmmaker again. So you never really know the extenuating causes of things. Maybe one of the programmers loves sci-fi and leans heavy to sci-fi, so your film's getting in. Where another festival, the programmer hates sci-fi, doesn't resonate with them at all. they're not going to program it. So there's no way you can really quantitate that. And when you say breakthrough, again, what does that mean? Maybe, you say festival's important, but somebody gets on YouTube and then they get hired to make a feature film that becomes a huge box office a success, which has just recently happened. So, maybe that was the right way to go about doing it. That's the great thing about short films and the wild, wild west aspect of it. There's no way to say how you really break through. So I
Right.
wish I could write for you, like how here's the recipe. I'll rewrite my book with that. Here's the recipe, the way you can completely break through. But
Yeah.
again, you as your own studio have to decide what breakthrough means. And the other thing I will just sidebar for a second, it's not cheap to do the festivals. You do have to pay money to apply. It is a numbers game. You can't just apply to two festivals and assume you're getting into both. Quite often, people apply to quite a few festivals, and if you do get in, if you're local, if you're going to a local festival such as yours and you live near there, then that's great. You get to go, you just drive up, park, get in. But if your film gets into, let's just say, Seattle, and you live here in Los Angeles, well, of course you want to go to Seattle to see your film, and they won't pay for a short filmmaker to fly up. So you got to figure out how to, corral frequent flyer points and get free hotel rooms from points or something like that. But it's going to cost you money to go up and have your film shown in front of an audience. So, it's not a free thing. The other thing I will say, going backwards, when I said, bad acting and bad sound, you really got to invest in post production. Having good production value is great, but where it really shines and we really should pump money in is have great post production sound and post production color. So then it leaps from a film that you made on your iPhone to a film that looks like a real film. And you can compete with films that look done in that
Yeah.
way. Again, that isn't necessarily cheap either. Sometimes you have friends that are studying it and can do it for you, and sometimes you have to pay somebody to do it for you. But that really will boost your chances if you have great sound and great color on your film.
Yeah. 100%. Um, what are your thoughts on like seeing your career as like a continuum? Like some people say, like you should just focus on the project that you're doing and just be immersed in that. But what about like looking at a film and seeing it as a stepping stone? Like this is gonna set me up for the next film. Like, what is your philosophy on that?
Well, I would hope, you want to make films your whole entire life. And, sometimes I know a lot of feature filmmakers who have gone back to making shorts because the features were just stalling, and it's like, I want to be creative. I want to be making stuff. Screw it. I'm just going to make my own short film again, even though I was done with short films and I've already made a feature. Um,
Right.
because again, nobody's going to stop you from making a short film and you can be creative and do whatever you want and the creativity can just pour out of you. So I do think, you should think about where you want to go, but I also don't think you should put such pressure on what you're doing. Like, this will be a calling card that people will see it as a proof of concept. And I will definitely get money for my feature film. Now, many short films are proof of concepts, and that might be the smartest use of your resources is to make a short film that will help people visualize what your feature film is or your TV show. And there are so many great examples of films that have done that for people. So, not to say that that isn't the way to go about it. Um, but again, you as a studio have to decide what you want to do. And I do think it's smart to kind of look ahead in the future. As one of my exercises in class, we do a 5 year plan. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I have so many students who are like, I don't like to think that way. And it's like, totally fine. I'm not going to force you to think about 5 years ahead of time. But
Mhm.
sometimes the person who says, I want to be winning an Academy Award in 5 years, like, okay, well, let's figure out how to get you there. And you just back it out. If 5 years from now you see yourself on the Oscar stage, on the Academy Award stage holding an Oscar, what's the Oscar for? All right, well, you've got to make it the year before, whatever that is, So, like, if I want to win for my short film, okay, well, then you've got to have your film like on the festival circuit the year before, and then the year before that, you've got to actually make that film, right? And probably the year before that, you should be raising money to make the film as best you can, so that you can put it on the festival circuit and try to get qualified for an Oscar and do Oscar campaigning, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see the steps to get you there if you think ahead 5 years. But it doesn't mean that's going to happen. You can have that whole big plan. And then, you meet somebody on the festival circuit who hires you to go be their director of production. And all of a sudden you find yourself working at a company as opposed to, making a film. And
Yeah.
maybe that's a great thing too. So I have so many friends who started off as directors. Not everyone gets to be a director for their whole entire life. that you get a job somehow somewhere else. Sometimes they turn into programmers. Sometimes they turn into like turns out I love editing, and I'm going to be an editor. This is just an entree into the world of many different jobs. And of course, not to be negative, but so many jobs are changing in this world. And formats are changing, and which is great. It's wonderful that there's always new opportunities. But you may not, your vision for yourself in 5 years may not be what the film industry is like at all in 5 years' time.
Absolutely. What is, you've produced so many short films and so many projects over the years in your career. What are some of your methods of like saving money during projects, so that like during production, or that way we could put more money into post production, sound, and festival
See,
submissions?
I thought I would love if more people thought that way because mostly what we all do is we just get ourselves through production.
Yeah,
It's like you take every single penny you've raised and put it into production. And you kind of need to, right? Because that is a limited time period and you want it all to show up on the screen. But a smart person would budget towards post production and marketing, if you want to call it marketing, or distribution of getting it on the festival circuit or promoting it in some way. So it would be smart if you put money into that. And again, as I'm telling you, like post production sound and color, so it's wonderful and bump the film up so high. I'd love if you put money aside for that, and just were cheaper on production so that you could really shine in post production. So, there's no secret to how to do this. It's literally just how much money can you raise and what can you do with that. And I do think you should be smart. Like if you've written the script and you're so determined you're going to make it, but as you look at this, you realize and realistically budget how it's going to do. I can't afford to make this right now. That's why I don't think be ambitious and just jump in. I think raise more money or say this is not the project I can make right now and come up with something else. I don't want you to fail by making something that is really not to the level that you see it being. And if you want to impress and stand out, you have to do it well, you know? Um, and maybe you fail in an interesting way, and that's great too. But I think with so much films out there, people aren't going to really be interested in the fail in an interesting way kind of film.
right. What if what would you say for if there's anybody out there that might be stuck and not sure what to make a film about?
Well, I would hope you would have a burning passion. And actually, especially in a class, quite often I have to say to the student, why do you want to make this film? What is it that you want to say to an audience? What do you want to say personally? Because it feels very generic and just like, I have to write an assignment for class.
Yeah,
And I don't think that you should, I mean, you could totally can do that, but I don't think you should do that. I think you should make something that really shows you how unique you are. And one of the assignments we do in class is we take a prompt and everyone has the same exact prompt, but then we have everyone go off and make it, write it out, and everybody comes out with something different. So I don't think, and it always shows us, look, you do have a unique voice. We all had that exact same prompt, but you did a mafia story, and you did a ghost story, and you did a domestic comedy story. It just comes out differently because of who you are and what you want to say. So I don't think, your filmmaker's voices, I was like, what does that mean? I think it's just whatever you're really interested in doing. And what you're interested in doing may change as time goes on. Something that you write when you're 18 is probably something not that you're going to want to make when you're 38. And that,
yeah,
it's a lot of problems with film school student shorts is because they haven't led enough of a life. So a lot of it's kind of coming of age or fake stories based around movies they've seen and they don't have really anything to say.
yeah,
So, it's a rare 18, 19, 20-year-old who really has a burning something that they need to say that needs to be conveyed to audiences of all ages.
yeah,
Um, but, they got to make films and they got to, learn. And, maybe that film is not going to be the film that turns the world on fire. Maybe they do need to wait until they're, 25 until they have some more experience. They had to get a job bartending, and because of that, they had a really unique experience. And they also now have a bar set that they can use because they asked their boss. And now all of a sudden, they're telling a really interesting story set in a bar based on experiences that only they have had. That's unique to them. And then all of a sudden, that's a story that I think people would want to see.
yeah. What how should filmmakers approach, like, if once they have a good idea for a story, and maybe their scripts are too long, or maybe their previous work, maybe their short films are too long. How could they uh write these scripts shorter? Like what is it about making your stories shorter to help them stay
Well,
consistent?
two things. You always want to start the story as late as possible. So it's not like, oh, now I'm waking up in bed. Now I'm brushing my teeth. Now I'm making breakfast. Now I'm going out the door. It's like, no, no, the film has not started yet. When does the film actually start?
Yeah.
This is a film about you as a bartender. I really don't need to see all of this. And that's kind of because, again, we're used to feature filmmaking where they do that kind of thing. It's like, it's character exposition. Now we understand what kind of person it is by how they made breakfast. It's like, yours the film is about a bartender, so let's just stay in the bar. And then you want to get out as soon as possible. And also, I will say, I'd love if you had a great ending to your short film. So many, like, I cannot watch Saturday Night Live because all those sketches never have a good ending. They just kind of peter out. And with a
Sure.
short film, if you have a really great ending, then your film will be successful, and people will remember it and talk about it better than if you just kind of like there's no real ending and it peters out. I always say to students like end with a bang, do something big for your ending, have it really be something memorable and great and unexpected. Ending is really important. So back to you, like, how do you know if it's good or not? I would have actors read it, do a table read with friends of yours, either actors or non-actors, and hear it and see, and talk to people and have them see what they say about it.
Yeah.
Get feedback before you actually shoot it because you're going to get asked for feedback once you shoot it, and once you've shot it, it's probably kind of hard for us to help you get it much better. But again, always start as late as possible, end as early as possible. Another pet peeve of mine is films that have like 10 endings. It's like, that was your ending. Oh, wait, we have another ending? Oh, wait, we have another ending? Oh, and we have another ending. And
Yeah.
now we have 3 minutes of credits. It's like, actually, your film was over 5 minutes ago. I don't know why you keep.
Yeah.
So, don't do multiple endings.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I know like a lot of my earlier short films were like 15 pages, 25 pages, 35 pages, just long. And it took a lot of experience to learn how to write more contained scripts, and then just having a process. Like for me, when I didn't know where to start, well, I already started, but I didn't know how to make my scripts better because whenever I would read them, they would, for one, be too long, and then two, I wouldn't be gripped anymore. Uh, like
That's great.
something would be missing. I was no longer moved, and I would just feel like, yeah, this, it doesn't go anywhere. Like I need to figure out something. So I took I went to UCLA Extension and I took the I think it's a class you're teaching now, developing your short film.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
Many
took
people
that
teach it.
class.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I took that class a couple years back, and that
Oh,
was a
God.
game changer. Like it taught
And
me about log lines, beat sheets.
I'm so glad. Classes like UCLA Extension, which I'll promote real quickly, but also writing groups, meeting friends that way, and table reads also really help. Just having, you have a Zoom read, invite your friends to read it over Zoom. It really does help that way. Uh, so I'm glad to hear that that was helpful to you. And again, too long. The other thing is you're your own student. You do whatever you want to do. Don't make me influence you. But when I used to review short films for IndieWire and go to festivals and see a ton of short films, I started to notice that the magic number that worked for me, not for comedies, but kind of for dramas or serious films that had a lot of stuff they had to kind of accomplish, 12 minutes. The running time was always around 12 minutes. And so, I don't want to turn that into a magic number, but if you're
Yeah,
like at 15, I'd love for you to try to shave it down more to like 12. Um, don't go from 10 to like, oh, I can go all the way up to 12, but just it
yeah,
works. It doesn't work for everybody and everything of that sort. But if you were to force me, to say how long should a short film be, 12 or under.
yeah, yeah. And it's interesting that number because a lot of grants and a lot of contests that's around the range, like 12 pages is 12 pages, 12 minutes is like kind of the sweet spot for a lot of things.
It's
It's
a
kind
sweet
of
spot.
interesting.
Now, again, you go see the Oscar short films, which are extremely well funded. They're all like 22 minutes long. I mean, several of them are 12 minutes long too, but they're, like this is really long. And the answer is those are kind of more films that fall into a short film that basically is a feature. you
Right.
know it's a 22-minute feature basically. It's not going to be just you as a bartender or a story of a bartender in a bar. There's going to be a lot more going on. There may be subplots that may be much more developed in terms of what the storyline is versus a true short film that is exploring. Some short films are like scenes set in one location, 12 minutes set in the bar, and that's what we're gonna do. Some films are mini movies where we're gonna be in 20 different locations and have lots of different actors, and it basically is a mini movie. Those mini movies tend to sometimes still beyond the 12-minute mark because they have all the stuff that they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And those tend to be Oscar films, are more like the mini movies.
Yeah, like one of my methods that I sort of like kind of came up with on my own was if I have a script that's like getting a little too long on like the first draft or something like that, what I'll do is I'll take a look at my beat sheet and I'll just divide, like let's say I have 7 beats that I'm utilizing. I'll just divide that by the page count that I'm aiming for, and then I'll know how many pages for each beat. Like let's say it's like a max of like two, um, like a page and a half or 2 pages per beat. I can't go over that. Then that's kind of like helps me sort of get back into like a sweet spot, and then I could start to kind of open it up again. And maybe the first beat is only like half a page, and then like maybe the second beat could be 2 pages, and then that kind of gets it.
And if that works for you, again, that's great. And I want everyone to invent any kind of system that works for them in that way. For me, when I look at me at beat sheets, it's always like, are you moving the story forward? And quite often you'll see two beats of the exact same thing. He doesn't do well with customers. He doesn't do well with customers. It's like you've already done the beat that he doesn't do well with customers. Take out that second beat that he doesn't do well with customers. Hitman, he's hired. He doesn't know if he wants to kill the person. He still doesn't know if he wants to kill the person. He's debating whether he wants to kill the person. It's like that's all the same beat. They don't spend all that time to choose which beat it's going to be. He doesn't know if he wants to kill the person. Okay, then what happens next? I think what happens next is a really nice way to kind of build out your story. What happens next? What happens next? If you're dwelling too long on something, it's like we're moving on, people. What happens next? What happens next?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on persistence, timing, and luck when it comes to building a career with short films?
Oh, I like all three of those. I think those are kind of magic words. And of course, you can't control luck. But with luck, they always say, like, be prepared, and you got to put yourself in the arena, and then you could potentially have luck. But persistence for sure. It's so easy to be like, oh, nothing happened with my first short film. That's it. I'm never doing anything again. It's like, if I told you on your fourth film, they're going to build a statue out of it, well, then of course you'd rush through and make all four films to get there. But I can't guarantee you're getting a statue made out of your fourth film, or you're going to get an Oscar for your fourth film. There's no in life. There's just no magic answer for this. You just have to be the person that's like, I'm going to make films until I die. And if I hit it on four, that's great. And if I hit it on 16, that's great too. Or if I
Yeah.
never hit it, I'm so happy that all these things exist that I've made.
Wow. We have a segment here on Between Frames called the rewrite,
Okay.
and it doesn't have to specifically pertain to writing, but it's the idea is like what's something in your career that you would rewrite, or like what's a project that fell through, or a pivot you had to make in your career. Like, is there anything that stands out to you throughout your journey, of something you maybe would
Well,
rewrite?
I will say, and I don't think this is a bad thing. I have always been just like people come to me and say, "Hey, would you do this?" And I always just say yes. And so, consequently, I've kind of ping ponged around and done a ton of different things. I mean, we could be talking about writing books. I've written 4 books. I've produced feature films, short films. I've worked at cable channels for forever. I teach. There's so many different things, and mostly it's because somebody said yes. And I recently went back and produced my second full length feature because a friend of mine is like, you should be making features again. Let's do this feature together. And I said yes. After years of saying no to people because I don't want to produce for free anymore. She wrangled me into producing for free. But I said yes. It was a great experience. And as a result of that, a friend of hers was like, could you produce my short film? And I'm like, I'm done producing short films. But I was like, oh, okay, I'll produce your short film. So a lot of times I don't think it's negative to say yes. Sometimes it ping pongs you around in places you never thought you were going to be, but that's life. So, I could have been much more straightforward and been like, I'm only going to do features. And, after my first feature, I'm looking for another feature to produce and have 10 features under my belt. But instead, after the first feature, it was like, hey, do you want to produce a play? And I was like, sure. Do you want to produce a short film? Sure. I just tend to sit, things come my way and I say yes.
Yeah, that like for me, that definitely helped me like in the beginning of my journey. Like when I was a young videographer starting out, I said yes to everything because I just was hungry for experience, and I just loved doing it. I saw that I was good at it, and I just wanted to see where I could take it. So I would say yes to everything, say yes to music video, commercial, wedding, whatever it was.
And you
Uh,
don't consider that a mistake, right?
no, I mean it really, I achieved what I wanted, which was getting the experience. Like it wasn't even about making money or getting paid. I just, you could give me some gas money and I would have showed up and, shot your project. And I did a ton of that in the beginning. And then like saying yes to everything, you're like, taking advantage of every opportunity and getting the networking out of it, getting the relationships and the resources, building all of that, building the experience, making a strong portfolio. It did get to a point where it started to not benefit me as much anymore because then I wasn't focused. I was just saying yes and stretching myself thin to a lot of different things. So that I had to start having more of a balance and, um, you know, f- like seeing, not stretch myself thin because I'm not trying to like do too much here. And, everyone's journey is different, like all the timing and stuff. So, like, where I'm at today, I'm super selective about what I say yes to because I have very specific goals and plans for what I'm trying to do, and I'm already pretty busy, so it's like I say no to a lot of things just because I'm like, well, I don't need to do that. I don't need the experience, or it's not about the money, or whatever. So like just being selective, because I know where I'm at with my career of what I should be focusing on. Because after all the experience and things I've been through, I've been able to get clarity on what it is I want to do, what it is I want to focus on. So it's like sometimes um, it's good to say yes a lot, and then sometimes you have to kind of like evolve that whole thing. But as a main idea overall, I think it's great for people to just say yes to a lot of things and just figure out what you like, figure out what opportunities come out of it, see who you meet, build your network, and just take that as far as you can.
What I was gonna say is that, but that's how I met you. It's because you were like, "I will shoot things," and there was such a lovely open door. And now here we are talking.
Yeah,
It's like, and we've done many things together because of that first time when you said, and you were open about this. I'm happy to shoot anything for anybody. And it was great, and there was such a lovely attitude, and it pays off. So sometimes you don't know what those seeds are that you're planting by that, but you also have to protect yourself because you know working for free, so much of the industry, and especially no budget filmmaking, is asking people to work for free all the time. And there
yeah,
is a point where it's like, but I got to eat.
yeah,
And also, you can put a lot of time to other people's work and then look around and be like, wait, they're driving the Porsche and they're in Hollywood and, in the mansion. And wait, why am I not there too? I helped help. So those people are the people who are very focused on what me, and they can be very successful that way. So sometimes you do have to draw boundaries, but I do think you never know where those seeds you planted could grow and what they could turn into.
yeah. What do you feel are like the highs and lows of what we do? Because there's ups and downs when it comes to production or projects or like comparing yourself to other people or like
Yeah.
festivals, not getting into any festivals and not.
Exactly. There's a lot of jealousy of like, wait, their film got in and their film's not better than my film. You can Sundance now has the thing that you can watch their films digitally and during the festival. You don't have to go and you can pay, I think it's like $65 and see all the short films. And I know filmmakers who watch it and be like, my film that I submitted was so much better than theirs. So it's so easy, to feel bad or judge or whatever. But we all have our own paths. And you can't judge against other people. And sometimes, you never know what those people who are driving their Porsche may be very miserable. But we just see the outside version of like, look, they seem to be, living the dream. Also, I do think creativity counts a lot. It's super fun to be creative, and that's again where short films are so terrific because you can have an idea and toss it out. And when I teach, we all come up with all these ideas in the classroom, and I'm always reminding them, an hour ago, none of these ideas existed. And because we've all come up with them and we've all shared them, we all heard them, they now exist. And we were excited to make them. And maybe we'll take it the next step and turn those actually into films and share those with other people. And they may have lives outside of the classroom of just imagining. But creativity is really fun. And short films, it's so much fun to make these things. and it's fun to do, weird stuff and not have to do a lot of when you get paid for it, it's soulless. And
Yeah.
and that's why a lot of people are jealous of you that you get to make a short film that's really fun. And when you go to film festivals, people always tell you, "Oh, the short filmmakers have the most fun because there's no pressure." The feature filmmakers are there to try to get a deal and they've invested so much money in it, and it's high stakes for them. But for short filmmakers, it's like, "We're here." There were films to people. We're just excited to be here. Where's the party?
Yeah.
So it's a great time to be a short filmmaker. It's a lot of fun. And, being your own studio is a lot of fun. It's fun designing your own poster. Later on they will design it for you and say, "Here's your poster," and you're like, "Oh, I hate this poster so much," and but you're stuck with it because you're not in charge anymore. So there's so much fun. There's so much creativity. I hope everybody wants to make short films and just appreciates that they get to make these little weird things and find audiences that appreciate and love them. And when you put it up on YouTube and people put comments saying, "I love it," and "This is great, this is weird," that's so exciting too. Strangers have seen your film and appreciated it and took the time to watch it and comment on it. Like, you got to celebrate that as well. So there's a lot of things that are easy to not understand the value of, but it's huge.
Yeah, there was something that you said in towards the end of your book, Making a Big in Shorts, was bad filmmakers make safe choices. So could you sort of like break that down for us, like what that means?
It's like, you're making something you've seen before, or you're just kind of executing ABCD, and you want kind of points for, like, "Look, I made it," and it's like, "Okay, good job." But it's nothing unique or special, or doesn't say what's unique about you. It's something we've seen before. It is not Nothing is really different or groundbreaking or makes it worth my while seeing it. It was all just kind of safe and okay. And because we're building something, right? Building a short in itself is a big deal. That you've been able to make something. It's not easy too. But sometimes, it's just not great. And, but because we can all do it, some of us are just not great filmmakers. A lot of filmmakers whose films I produced never went on to continue to make other things. Um, it just is, you have to decide whether this is something that you're an artist in that way and want to keep on doing it. But yes, if you just kind of are painting by numbers, sometimes you have to paint by numbers to be a class project. It's like, fine, whatever. But I would hope when you're your own studio, you're not interested in painting by numbers. That you really want to be, making Van Goghs.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, Before we wrap up, we have a one last segment called Cinema Picks.
Okay.
You recommend a film for us. It could be an indie film, it could be a mainstream film, or a classic film. But what would you like to share with us?
Well, if you don't mind, because of short filmmaking, I will pick short film. And I will tell you that, I'm talking about live action. I've always produced live action, but one of my favorite filmmakers of all time is an animator named Don Hertzfeldt from Austin, Texas. And he's in Austin, Texas now. He's not from Austin. But he is an animator who, on his own, has consistently made really weird short films that have done amazing on the festival circuit. And he has a huge fan base. One of his earlier films that I loved uh, was Lily and Jim, but he's done World of Tomorrow is the film that a lot of people really like. Rejected is another film that really like, and he has a brand new film out right now that I'm embarrassed. I can't remember the name of it. It's Paper something. But it's available on VOD. If you look up Don Hertzfeldt, I have not seen it yet. I've got to see it because, again, I really enjoy his work. And it's on the festival circuit now, but also available on VOD. So I would recommend the works of Don Hertzfeldt.
Tremendous. We'll definitely check it out. And where could the people find you if they want to get your books or, take one of your courses or follow your journey, see your projects?
I have a terrible website that's kimadelman.com that is just has like information, but just Google me, it'll show up. The books will show up there, the courses will show up there. I use your Google power of Google and it'll all come up.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much for being with us, Kim. This was a tremendous conversation as
I
always.
always enjoy talking to you, and thank you for doing this podcast. I hope that people get a lot out of it. I think they do.
Absolutely. Thank you. That means a lot.
Thank you for joining Between Frames. If today's conversation resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might enjoy it as well. Also, if you have a filmmaking question challenge, or story you'd like to share with us, email us at info@mayfilms.studio, and we may feature it in a future episode. You can find more conversations, films, and updates from May Films in the links below. Until next time, story first, always.